Good morning. Just finishing up my coffee here, thinking about what we can talk about this morning. And I have some ideas. I also have some new releases for this month in books that I think you might be interested in. And I'm going to share with you what I'm doing with my knitting, and I have some fun stories. So it was Mother's Day this weekend. Happy Mother's Day to all who celebrate or care. I am not one of those. In fact, I have a lot of trauma around Mother's Day in that in 1988 on Easter Sunday, my mother told me she was dying of brain cancer. Yay, timing. So there's that. And also that was during a period of time I was trying to get pregnant and have children, and I kept having miscarriages. So Mother's Day has a lot of trauma for me, which is sort of in the past, but it used to get, when I was active in that church that sends missionaries out, you know, Mother's Day is a big deal. And it was always fraught with weirdness, like who gets what and who's recognized as a mother and who isn't. And anyway, I'm glad to put that behind me. However, that being said, we decided to go to brunch on Saturday because we knew Sunday would be crazy. Note to self, the Saturday before Mother's Day is also crazy. We have a wonderful, wonderful restaurant here near where I live called the Catella Deli. It's a great deli. What can I say? It has wonderful, wonderful food. So we went and we got there at like 9:30. We were pretty early and we still had to wait 45 minutes to be seated. But, oh, such a fun meal. I got the lox on bagel, which is like my favorite thing in the whole world. And my daughter got her traditional avocado toast, which she can never finish. And then she brings home. I don't know. And then Sammy, of course, got the breakfast burrito, which had pastrami in it, which, hey, whatever floats your boat. So that was really fun to do the Mother's Day thing. And then actually on Sunday, we didn't have to do anything, which was great. Sam had church in the morning. He sings at a Catholic church on Balboa Island, very fancy, very small. He's the cantor there. And so Julia and I have Sunday morning to just kind of sit around and chit the chat and do nothing. And that's pretty much what we did. It was, in other words, it was a perfect weekend. Prior to the weekend, however, I got my hair cut, obviously, shorter. I go to the salon. I've been going there about 4 or 5 years. It's in Orange County. Lovely, lovely people who run and operate the salon. So I'm getting my hair cut and I'm, you know, as you do in a salon, you chit the chat with the various people that are there. And this was right after the new Pope had been announced. So I had just heard about it on the radio. It was very exciting. Anyway, the woman in the booth next to me mentioned something about being Catholic. And I, of course, being the nosy busybody that I am, turned to her and say, "Oh, did you hear we have a new Pope? It's the American." She's like, "Oh, fantastic. Is he a liberal or conservative Pope?" And I said, "Well, he's kind of posted some things that are anti-Trump and anti-Vance." She goes, "Well, I'm done with him then. I used to be a Democrat and I've recovered," or something. And then she goes off. And of course, this is the thing I don't understand. You can support small government. You can support reducing taxes. You can support all those things. Well, maybe not the taxes part. But why the hecky darn do you have to bring up transgender people? People, this is less than 2% of the population. Why are you so fixated on this? She had to bring it up. Fortunately, we didn't get into vaccines, so I consider it a win. But what was interesting, I minded my P's and Q's. I did not say anything controversial. I did not ask any questions that could have been controversial. I just went, shut down. But it bothered me all day. As I sat and I knit, or I was doing other things that enabled me to have my mind, I realized I was walking around in upset. The upset was not about what I could have said. The upset was, oh my God, there are people who are okay with this. Obviously, we didn't get into deep discussions. I don't know to what length. She did say she hates Musk, so there is that. But I don't know. How do you talk to people who are so fundamentally on the other side of things and understand reality so fundamentally different from the way you do. That is something that's continually blowing my mind. Enough of that nonsense. Let me show you what I did this week. Yes, as predicted, as promised, we finished the Ukraine socks. Here they are. They're very cute. They're very comfy. I love them. And last Sunday, and I'll show you pictures because I took pictures. It's ridiculous. I keep my yarn in one, and this is a very important detail for people who are yarnies, because you understand that having only one bin of yarn exemplifies the incredible restraint I have about buying yarn. I have no restraint. But I decided I needed to know what I had. So I sorted everything by color. I took pictures. And while I was there, I found some yarn. And as I picked it up, I knew instantly that these needed to be socks for my bestie. And so I present to you the bestie socks. Well, only one is made, but it has these cool cables, and it's a speckled tweed. This is stroll lapis. Knit Pick stroll lapis is the color. And I am loving this. I'm about this far on the second sock. So I'll finish these, Linda. I promise I'll send them to you. I told her about them yesterday on the phone. She was very excited. So anyway, I love these. These are very fun. It's also one of my favorite patterns to knit. I love cables. I love color work and doing all the fun things like that. But there's something really magical about twisting stitches that I love. And I got squishy mail this week, and I already know what I'm going to do with it. Okay, note that I said I sorted all my yarn, so I knew what I have, so I wouldn't have to buy more yarn. Yeah, I belong to a yarn club, Speckled Finch Studios, and they great yarn. So look at this. Of course, it matches my couch. That was accidental. So yarn clubs work in a very cool way. It's kind of mystery. You don't know what you're getting. You have an idea, but you don't know. You open the box and it's like, oh, and believe me, this time I opened the box and I went, oh, goody. And I know exactly the pattern I'm going to use for this. And these are going to be pour moi. Yes, you gorgeous thing. Very excited about this. So aside from knitting, obviously I've been very busy reading, but as I have explained many times before, I often spend more time reading about books than I actually do read books. So in my reading about books this week, I realized there are so many great books being released this month. Obviously, every month there are great books released, but I wanted to highlight a couple that I am really looking forward to reading. You know, I love me some Anthony Horowitz. In fact, a book I just finished this week is number 4 in his Hawthorne and Horowitz series. And that book was called The Twist of the Knife, book 4. This was my least favorite of the 4. And it's interesting because, remember, this is the series where the author puts himself as a character. Well, in this book, he put himself as the suspect of murder. I don't know, the story didn't flow quite as well as the others, or maybe I was just distracted. I don't know. But what was interesting is at the end, his author's notes, he talked about how difficult this book was to write. And perhaps that's what I was picking up on. But he said he had to go to the therapist and work some things out. Because in the book, he worked through him being accused of murder. So that was fun. And what I'm going to tell you about is another series of his Susan Ryeland series. So a new book just dropped today called Marble Hall Murders. And this is number 3 in the Susan Ryeland series. The first one is called Magpie Murders. The second is called Moonflower Murders. And the third one is what I just said, Marble Hall Murders. I cannot keep these books straight in my mind. So I have notes. Forgive me. I have notes. I love these books. So Susan Ryeland, the character who solves murders, is a literary publisher, an editor, which is cool. And what he does in these books, and they're big, long, juicy books, 500, 600 pages, which I love because he sticks a book in the middle of it. He has another character, Atticus Punch, who is a German detective, and he shows up and Susan edits this. Anyway, it's all great. So this one, it was released today. I just I had pre-ordered it, so I just got the notification from Audible that it's available, and I'm very excited about that. So other books that are coming out. There's another book coming out this actually next week from one of my favorite authors, Kevin Wilson. You know that I love the absurd. You know that I love a book that takes something ridiculous and turns it on its head. And this is what Kevin Wilson does. One of my favorite books, for Nothing to See Here, was one of his, I think his first book I read. And it's a story about children who, when they get very excited, they light themselves on fire. Hence, Nothing to See Here. I loved this book. It was crazy. Another one of his books I loved is called Now Is Not the Time to Panic. I mean, hello, the titles are fantastic. And this is a story about two boys who get really bored. They're like 14, and they make a poster about something that's scary, and it sets the whole town alight. Anyway, it's the story of that. Very, very fun. The new book is called Run for the Hills. So I look forward to reading that. That's probably, as soon as I finish the two books I'm reading now, I'm going to pick up the new Horowitz one, and I'm definitely going to read the Kevin Wilson one because he is funny. Remember I told you about John Scalzi, the book When the Moon Hits Your Eye and It Turns to Cheese, and the absurdity of that, but how the absurdity of the situation enables the author to write about the human condition in such a brilliant way. And Kevin Wilson does the same thing. So if you're in the mood for something silly, ridiculous, and yet deeply poignant, I recommend that. So I use Goodreads as my book database. It's where I keep track of all the books I want to read. I have my tags set up. This year I did something different. I tagged them according to the month they were going to be released for my new releases, so I could keep track of things, because there are several books. There's a book I can't wait to read called Welcome to Murder Week, and I keep thinking it's going to be released this month, but it's not going to be released till June 10th, and I'm kind of bummed about that because it's getting a lot of buzz and people are very excited about this book. So two books I read about yesterday and looked really interesting to me, and I will tell you why, because they're sort of books I don't normally read. The first one is The Love Haters by Katherine Center. Katherine Center is another contemporary romance writer. I've read several of her books. They aren't my favorites, but they're entertaining. So I'm looking forward to this. I always like to break up things with a silly romance now and then, and then I'm like, okay, I'm not going to read romance for a while. And this next book I'm going to tell you about is touted as a literary romance. A literary romance because it's snooty. I don't know why. And it's called Consider Yourself Kissed by Jessica Stanley. It just looked interesting. Of course, it's British, and you know I'm an Anglophile. And so those are some books to look forward to. Let me tell you what else I'm reading. I am reading a book called, I wrote a Substack on this. I'm rereading a book, and I haven't reread a book in a long time, but this is Still Life by Sarah Winman. This was my first Sarah Winman book, and I fell so in love with the rhythm of her writing and how we get the internal thoughts of people. And she reads her own audiobooks, and they are magical. The only thing I remembered about this book, I read it, 4 or 5 years ago. The only thing I remembered was the way it made me feel. I couldn't really remember the plot at all. I couldn't remember if it took place in Italy or in England. Tip, both. And there's a parrot, and that's all I could remember. But I was immediately drawn back in to the rhythm of her language. So this book takes place, it starts in the middle of World War II. Well, I guess it's kind of wrapping up World War II in Italy. And this young British man runs into some women who are protecting art during the war, and he happens to rescue a man who was about to commit suicide. He rescues the man, and of course, moving forward in the book, the man passes away, but gives his whole fortune and this home in Tuscany to the British man who saved his life. So I'm not even halfway through at this point, and it's just this delightful cast of characters. For example, probably my favorite character is a man named Cress. That's not his real name, but how he got his nickname was he went bald, and so they started calling him Egg And then they started calling them egg and cress, which is a very popular sandwich in egg and watercress is a popular sandwich in England. Then they just shortened it to Cress, and so he goes by Cress or Cressy, and he's just the most wonderful man. When he enters a room, he has to say something profound and ridiculous, and he's just wonderful. And I am remembering how much I love this character as I'm moving forward. The other book I'm reading is a new release, and it's the second in a series by Kristin Perrin. And this one is called How to Seal Your Own Fate, and the first one was called How to Solve Your Own Murder. And it was quite an interesting puzzle that they worked out, and this one picks up right after that, and it's interesting. Oh my gosh, you guys, my eczema on my hands just flared last night, and my hands are so itchy. Do you guys get weird things on your hands or face or any? Old age is weird. Your body does weird things that you're like, why is it doing this? And there's never an answer except maybe they're tired. But the eczema thing bugs me. Anyway, sorry. Little sidetrack there. Nobody panic. I'm back. Anyway, Sue's the How to Seal Your Own Fate, How to Solve Your Own Murder. Those were cute. Not the best I've ever read, but very entertaining. And this is here's the thing. When you read as many books as I do, and I'm very picky. I have no qualms about putting a book down if it hasn't grabbed me within a couple of chapters. Life's too short to read a book you don't want to read, right? So I tend to not stick with books that are really anything less than 4 stars or 3.5. But every now and then a book starts out really great, and then it kind of poops out in the middle and the end, and you've got yourself a 3-star read. But I mostly stick with books that really are fantastic. And because I read so many of the same genre, as in cozy mysteries, they kind of stack up in order as to which ones I like the most. And although this is a great book and I do recommend it, I am not in any way telling you not to read it. It doesn't quite stack up to, say, Thursday Murder Club. Well, I'm just going to say that. What can I say? Yep. That's the book sitch. I hope you find some things that you really like to read. We've got some great books coming out next month. I'll probably talk about that in the next couple of weeks because I want you guys to know what's what. And also, then you can put them on hold at the library before they come due, and you're not the 975th person in line. In the spirit of recommending books and things that interest me, because obviously I have some really bizarre belief that you go with what I say. So weird. I've discovered some shows, new shows and old shows. Julia introduced me to The Four Seasons, which is a series based on the movie by Alan Alda, who did Alan Alda produced, and I don't know if he wrote it, but he produced the movie back in the 80s. And this show with Tina Fey and Steve Carell and, all the people, it's a very funny. Anyway, we started that. That is a great recommendation. I love Tina Fey. So, in the spirit of Tina Fey and 30 Rock, I had a friend suggest a sitcom that I knew about but I'd never seen. I learned fairly early on, as I made suggestions to my sister of things she should watch, that comedy is very, very personal. For example, I know there are millions and millions of people who love The Office. I cannot watch it. It's just too cringe for me. Now, does that mean I'm right and they're wrong? No, it just means we're different, right? Some people really enjoy laugh tracks. Some people are really bothered by them. It's what my stepmom won't watch The Big Bang Theory because of the laugh track. It just bothers her. I get it. I totally get it. So anyway, my friend came over Friday. We were chitting the chat, and she said, Leanne, I think I know of a show that you might really like. And I went, oh, okay, what? She said, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which I always say Brooklyn 999 because it seems like it needs another 9. Am I wrong? No. There are a few seasons on Netflix, just so you know, but all 8 seasons are on Peacock. And I started with the first season. And you know how people say about Parks and Rec, the first season is kind of a throwaway. It didn't really find itself till the second season. No, this show starts with episode 1 being absolutely hilarious. Andy Samberg is a genius. And each one of these characters is so beautifully developed and compartmentalized that it fit together instantly in that first thing. Anyway, I'm almost through the first season. I have laughed out loud, uproariously, at least once in every episode. So if you have not watched this and you need something funny to kind of distract you, or just you need something funny because that's what you like, check this out. And if you have watched it again, I don't know, I find it absolutely brilliant because it feels like 30 Rock in the sense that the comedy it feels New Yorky. Oh gosh, David is going to kill me for saying that, but it feels New Yorky, and it's sort of the same kind of thing. Saturday Night Live, 30 Rock, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I loved it. So it's great. And again, if you haven't watched The Residents, absolutely a phenomenal story. Shonda Rhimes and her genius team, once again, producing something that is not only watchable, it is rewatchable. And that was just fantastic. So there's my pop culture recommendations of the week. So I get to do something on Sunday that I've never, ever, ever done before. And I'm quite excited. I'm going to be marching in a parade. Yes, it's my parade. No, it's Long Beach Pride Parade. And my daughter's company is an ambulance company. And because she's the DEI officer, or was until they decided we couldn't say DEI anymore, she's been very active in getting their company a presence in all the Pride events. They've done San Diego Pride, they've done Orange County Pride, and now we're doing Long Beach Pride. And it's a 1.5 mile route, very slow. But what's very fun is they stuck us right up at front. We're right behind the mayor and whoever the person is that's, the grand marshal of the parade. And it's going to be so great. So I will probably take pictures and have pictures taken. And I'm not dressing up or doing anything weird. I have to wear the Falk shirt, which, can I just say, in my semi-fat body, in my body, wearing a t-shirt that was built for men does nothing for me. So I'm going to have to figure out how to zest this up because it's really not good. But I am looking forward to that. So Long Beach Pride this weekend. Because most of the people watching this are people of a certain age, you're going to really appreciate this. I went to get a pedicure yesterday. I don't go as often as I should, and the nails were looking alarming. So I went to my favorite pedicure place, and this is a lovely place, and the ladies are very nice, and they do a great job. But what they play, mercifully, is not Fox News, but they play some music video channel. And I tuned into it quite a bit yesterday because I was sitting there knitting. And 80s power ballads that never quite made it to number one. So we had lots of Michael Bolton and Celine Dion, but they were all the music videos of songs that you sounded really, really familiar, but they weren't quite the song you thought they were. And also, to make it even better, it was slightly unsynced. So their lips would be moving and the music would be completely wrong. It was just a delightful experience. But the 80 power ballad, and it was weird because I'm sitting there going, in my head, this sounds so familiar. Oh, wait, that's not where they were going. What is going on? And so I realized that this chord progressions were exactly the same on every song. They all had an electric guitar going, and the electric keyboard with the reverb turned up. It's fantastic. I loved it. So my final story, and it is about finals, interestingly enough. So Julia's getting her master's. She's in the last week of her second to last semester, so she finishes in December. And last night they had the final for her negotiations class, and she's enjoyed this class a great deal, and the teacher is very cool. He comes every week with a hat and a flannel shirt and his jeans and his cowboy boots, and he's kind of stoic and he's kind of silly. And anyway, for their final presentation last night, her entire group dressed up exactly like him. Check this out. I find that so charming. And Julia had a moment where she's like, oh my gosh, what if he doesn't like this? But apparently he saw them walking into the classroom and their eyes met. And Julia just kind of went and nodded at him, and he nodded at them. And then, of course, he was just thrilled. So they did their entire final exam dressed as him. And what was better is when they stood up in front of the class to introduce themselves, they all used his name. Hi, I'm Wendell, and this is my partner Wendell, and Wendell, and Wendell. So brilliant. Thanks for listening. I noticed it's really interesting. There are some people who really enjoy listening to this, and there's some people who are like, yeah, peace out. I don't want to hear this old lady drivel on. And that's great. They're not the right people for this. So if you like this and you have other friends of a certain age, please pass this on. Subscribe, leave comments. I love your comments. Email me if you want to talk to me about something or you want me to talk about something. And of course, as always, I love your book recs. I love your feedback on television shows and anything else you'd like to share. Thanks everyone for listening. I hope you have a wonderful week full of peace and joy and good health.